Hey everyone, Tankenstein here, and welcome to my video for the Tier 6 Premium Planes in War Thunder. In this video, I will be trying to rank each and every Premium Tier 6 plane that's currently in War Thunder as of the creation of this video, so you guys get a better idea of which ones are, in my opinion, the best, which ones are the worst, and what's kind of in between and still very usable. Now, I have reviews for each and every one of these planes in the comments below. I'll try to post the links in the comments below so I know exactly how these planes fly. You know, I'm not just taking a stab at one or the other of them. I've flown them all, and actually I own most of them and fly them pretty actively. So this will be a pretty comprehensive list from somebody who is actually a pretty active user, again, of most of them and has flown all of them quite a few times each. So that said, I will be trying to do a tank version of this, and I'll try to release this tomorrow as well. So if you guys want, definitely subscribe so you can get that notification. Click the notification bell, then you should be able to see that as well tomorrow. But I kind of figured that a video like this is kind of necessary because no matter how many times I make a review on planes and all that, it really doesn't help when, you know, I say, oh, the F5C is this out of 10 overall, but it doesn't really give a good point of comparison to how it is versus other planes. So again, that's what I'm trying to do here. So as I said, let's start. We have D through S, with S being the best, D being the worst, and anything in between still being pretty decent with various levels of decency essentially. So with that said, let's start off with the AVAA here. Now this is a tough one to kind of rank. I mean, the first three of this, in my opinion, are going to be the toughest ones to rank because they have such a mix of capabilities, and I'll be primarily considering air RB capability in this list, just so you guys know, with ground RB being kind of just slightly secondary, so it'll probably be like 60-40 consideration in favor of air RB, and the reason being because these are aircraft. You know, I mean, ultimately, that's the primary purpose. That's where you're going to see these planes get the most use, and that's what most people are buying them for, so that they can grind the air tech tree in the air RB. And most people, if they buy these, they just use them in ground RB incidentally, especially with the rise of helicopters that have kind of taken a lot of the CAS role off of aircraft. You know, you start to see these being much more used exclusively in air RB, but again, air AB as well. I do consider both air and ground capabilities in this. So first we have the AV-8A. I really like this plane. It kind of holds your hand a bit because it has AIM-9Gs at 9.7 BR. It's got ballistics computers, and it also, as of right now, has countermeasures that you can put on with your AIM-9Gs. So before the custom loadouts existed, you, if I'm not mistaken, could not put countermeasures on this thing, but now that you can with your AIM-9Gs, which at 9.7 BR, AIM-9Gs are pretty decent, not amazing. You don't really get into amazing AIM-9s until like the AIM-9Ls basically, but I'll be going over that in just a moment. Now, what I would say though is that considering this has ballistics computers, a pretty good loadout when it comes to everything. I mean, you can carry some pretty hefty weight of bombs, some nice rockets with it. Again, two AIM-9Gs. It's got okay cannons, phenomenal acceleration, not great handling, but it's got better handling than the GR1, which I'll go over soon. I'll put the AV-8A in a solid A category. It's very good, and it can pretty much do everything air, ground very well without really any negatives, if that makes any sense. It's just a very solid overall plane, and it kind of holds your hand. Next up, we have a plane that doesn't really hold your hand, the F5C. Now, this aircraft has countermeasures standard, so it doesn't take up a loadout spot. It's got pretty decent cannons. It's got two 20mm cannons, if I'm not mistaken, not just a single double cannon, if that makes any sense, but I believe it's two individual 20mm cannons, and it can also carry two AIM-9Es. Now, that kind of sucks, because AIM-9Es at 10.3 BR is rough. AIM-9Es at 9.7 BR, in my opinion, is about the limit that they should be, but 10.3 BR, that's a rough one, and that kind of diminishes its capabilities. Plus, it doesn't have rocket or bomb ballistics computers. Now, this is supersonic, very maneuverable. It's got a pretty decent rate of acceleration. It can carry quite a few bombs, I believe up to 18 250-pound bombs. It can carry AGM-12Bs, which are very, very nice. So it can be quite effective in close air support, arguably more effective than the AV-8A, especially with those AGM-12Bs if you're good with them. But again, this thing has very little support for the player, and you really have to make each of your shots count. Whereas the AV-8A is a little bit easier on you. So this is a real tough one. But I'll probably put the F5C again in the A class because still with its just awesome capabilities, it can still do pretty much everything that you need. Again, it sucks that it doesn't have better missiles, but you can still get nice and easy kills at this BR with those missiles. It really gets a bad name in my opinion because you have so many noobs who just buy the F5C. I mean, it's still one of the most played and purchased top tier or high tier premium planes out there. And, you know, I think it has a higher skill ceiling than the AV-8A because this one's much more of a gunfighter than this one, but it gets a bad rap in my opinion. Now, next up, we have one that's going to be very controversial no matter what I choose. It's the A-10 Early. Now, the A-10 Early is a phenomenal aircraft. It can carry up to 6 AGM-65D, if I'm not mistaken, the TV guided Mavericks, which is fantastic for ground RB. It has its 30mm GAU-8 Burt cannon. It can carry two 20mm cannons underneath the wings. It can carry, most importantly, two AIM-9Ls on the wings, which is just phenomenal. The late version can carry 4 of those. And so the A-10 Early sits in a unique place in War Thunder because it's so slow. Its airframe is not really great for top tier, but it has those AIM-9Ls, which are all aspect, and they have, in my opinion, they're probably the best all aspect missiles in War Thunder currently because they have a 3-kilometer all aspect range as opposed to the R60 MKs, for example, that have, I think, 2 or 2.5. So it's a real tough one, but when you combine this with everything else, I mean, it's got a mediocre airframe for this BR. I mean, its airframe would be much better at like 6 or 7.0 BR, maybe 8.0 BR. But at 10.0 BR, where it currently sits, I mean, it's got tons of countermeasures. It's very maneuverable, but the plane can take a lot of damage, and it also has ballistic computers for bombs and rockets, smart ordnance again. Ooh, that's a real tough one. Plus the AIM-9Ls. I think when it comes to its ordnance, especially considering AIM-9Ls, if those were on like the F5C, it would be a easy S. Easy S. But when it comes to so many other things, I mean, this plane just can't carry a lot of energy with it when it flies. And so it can kind of be just a sitting duck in many ways. And so actually the A-10s are the planes I go for whenever I'm flying pretty much any of these other planes. You know, I mean, especially when it comes to the Su-25K, I love fighting A-10s because they just don't have the energy to be able to look up, basically. I mean, they're just very slow. And so because of that, I'll put it, you guys are going to hate me, in an A class. I'll give it an A+. I wish I could put it right here in the middle. I can't. And I'll be revising this at the very end if there's anything that I kind of see at the very end of this list that looks out of place. But I'll give it an A, but, you know, you guys know I'll just say an A+ because it's very, very good. Its missiles are phenomenal. Its cannons are phenomenal. But it just is mounted on a poor plane, a poor frame, and requires a lot of it, requires the success of your team. But this is another one that just gets a bad rap, kind of like the F5C, because you have a lot of noobs buying it. And oh god, those are the worst. Like when you're just starting off on the runway, some noob on this, just who's never flown and never heard the Burt cannon, the 30mm GAU-8, and he just fires it and he just takes out like 2 people on the runway. Oh god, I hate that. Anyways, next up we have the MiG-21 spsk. This is another very interesting one, although one that I could probably, I'll be able to choose this one a bit easier. Now, this is a subvariant of the MiG-21 PFs, so it's related to the PFM basically, and it's got the same engine more or less, just some tweaks to it, but I think it's got the same exact thrust and pretty much the same performance as the 9.3 VR PFM. The thing that makes this different is that it can carry countermeasures and it can carry R60s, and if you prefer, R13s. Now the problem with this aircraft, and you'll start seeing anything below A category, that some of them have some major downsides, and this one is one of those that has a major downside. The problem with this plane is that at 10.0 BR you have to choose between countermeasures and a cannon. So basically you can have either countermeasures and shrug off enemy missiles that are coming towards you, or you can have a cannon which will allow you to get more kills. Now the fact is you can only carry, again, 2 R60s or 2 R13 M1s, which basically means that if you're carrying a countermeasure pod, you have a hard limit each time that you go up in the sky as to how many kills you can get, and that's if you get a kill. So it really is tough to do. You can carry some R3s with this as well. I believe you can carry actually up to 4 of the lesser R3 missiles, whether it's the S or the R variants, which is cool, but again, I mean, who's going to do that? Like, if you have a 60% kill chance with the R60s, for example, I don't know if that's the actual kill chance, but if they have that much of a chance to actually land on the enemy versus like a 20% with the R3s, why would you choose the 4 R3s? You have a much better chance of getting kills, 2 kills even, than you might with 1 or 2 R3s. So much better, in my opinion, just to carry the 2 R60s. But again, it creates a hard cap on how many kills you can get. It's not really great when it comes to ground. I believe it has ballistic computers for rockets, but not bombs. So it's good, but again, I mean, it's got pretty mediocre capabilities overall. I don't really know if I can say anything great about it, but I can't really say anything bad. And again, whatever I put in here, they're still very flyable. I love this for air RB in bursts. It can do quite well. But again, it has more or less like a hard kill cap, and it's not really great when it comes to ground RB. So I'll put it in C for now. Kind of want to say B, but probably C. And this is another one where I think a lot of people are like, oh, the spsk is amazing. And I agree. It's amazing in short bursts. The problem is you either have to choose between defense and offense with the countermeasures versus gun, and also you have only 2 missiles regardless of what you choose. So it's it's a tough one to do, but I'll put it in C for now. Next up, we have the SU-25K, and 100%. I mean, this is probably going to be the easiest one of the night for me. This is an S-class vehicle any day of the week. I mean, at 9.7 BR, even if it was at 10.0 BR, it would deserve to be here. I mean, it's got everything. Pretty much like a better version of the A10, at least in War Thunder. Just much better when it comes to air RB. Arguably when it comes to ground RB, but substantially better for air RB for sure. It's got R60 MKs, 2 of them, which are great for air-to-air. They are all aspect. They do have a lower range than the AIM-9Ls on the A10, but you can also carry up to 4 23mm cannons under the wings, as well as 4 napalm bombs, which means that you can go ahead, destroy a base. This can get like 800 something kilometers, like 850 kilometers per hour very, very quickly. Over 9 or 950 oftentimes, even with 4 cannons under the wings, plus the 2 missiles, and even napalm bombs, you can get close to 900. Meanwhile, the A10 cannot reach anywhere near that. It's still hundreds of kilometers per hour slower than this. So you can pretty much bomb a base and kill planes very easily. I mean, I get 4, 5, 6 kill matches pretty commonly with this aircraft. I mean, it's not even something that like I have to be paying attention to. It just dominates. It's more the plane than me, and 100% it is an S-Class, even if it was 10.0 BR, S-Class all the way, phenomenal vehicle. I mean, I cannot say enough good things about it. Again, it just is a little bit weaker when it comes to close air support compared to the A10, but you could also make the argument that because it's faster, it's arguably as good or better. So tough to say, but easily an S-Class vehicle. Speaking of S, we have the MiG-21S. This is a tough one to rank. It's actually, you know what? It's probably not all that difficult to rank. Pretty much this has the same engine, if I'm not mistaken, as like the MiG-21MF. So it's actually got 10.0, 10.3 BR performance, but it sits at 9.7 BR. And the reason why is because it can only carry R3s, basically variants of it. So the R3S or the R3R. It can carry 4 of those. It cannot carry countermeasures. It can carry rockets and bombs. Pretty much this thing is just a very performance and gunfighter friendly plane. And I think it's really good, but it also lacks a lot of the technology that, let's say, for example, the spsk has. Pretty much the spsk has technology in lieu of performance, whereas this has performance in lieu of technology. And it's pretty much the same formula, except switched around on its head, that you get the S versus the spsk. Very similar planes in that they're very close to as capable as each other, but in different ways. If I didn't mention it before, this has ballistic computers for rockets, but not for bombs, just because it kind of lacks a lot. It's very difficult, in my opinion, I would imagine, for most players to really get into, just because, again, it doesn't have like R60s, doesn't even have R13s, it just has R3s, which are tough to use at 9.7 BR, plus the fact that it's a gunfighter. I'll probably put it in C, give it like the same C plus rating that I gave the spsk. Now another one for the Russians, we have the Su-7 BMK. I love this aircraft when it comes to grinding and quick strike. It is phenomenal in that way. It's a 9.3 BR supersonic strike aircraft for the Russians, and I think it does a really good job in the role that it has. So you can carry up to 4 napalm bombs with this. I believe up to 6 bombs in total. So was that like 4 500 kilogram bombs plus 250 if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't have countermeasures. It has really powerful cannons, but it doesn't have much ammo for them. Plus, it doesn't have missiles, so this thing is pretty much just a quick strike aircraft. It's got ballistic computers for both the bombs and rockets, which is really nice at 9.3 BR. But, you know, at first, actually, I was going to put it as a C rank because, in general, it's not really all that great. It's not great when it comes to air RB. I mean, you can actually get yourself a lot of points in air RB just by knocking out bases, destroying NPC plane, like bot planes, and also destroying ground targets. But, you know what? I'm going to put it in the B because it's a really, really good grinder for the Russians. Not nearly as good as the Su-27 or Su-25K. I mean, this thing, the Sukhoi 25, is just phenomenal. Like, you can easily get several times as many points per match as you will with the Su-7, the BMK, but I think that the BMK still holds a very nice place in War Thunder, especially at its BR. It's not bad at all, and it's a pretty functional close air support aircraft. So good overall, not great, not bad. Doesn't really do too much aside from strike, but it's not bad at all. So kind of right in the middle. Maybe like a B-. Next up, we have the Harrier GR1. This is a very interesting plane because it started off at 9.3 BR with its SRAMs and totally dominated War Thunder for about 1 week before they upgraded it to 9.7 BR, and then I think a few weeks later they did it to 10.0 BR, which is where it's been sitting ever since. This plane is amazing. The SRAMs in close range are pretty much unmatched. You can more or less launch them perpendicularly to an enemy, so long as they're within about 1, maybe 1.5 kilometers from you, and it will hit them. These things just track incredibly well, and it's just a very short range missile, but if it's a hit, you know, which oftentimes if you use them properly, it will be a hit. It's a very, very good aircraft. Now, this also has ballistic computers, I believe, for rockets and bombs, so it can be pretty capable in both of those roles, but it is a lower performer compared to the AV-8A. There's a lot that you could say about it, and there's a few things that you really can kind of take away from it. It does, again, perform worse than the AV-8A. I think that the AV-8A is a better performer overall. It's a better aircraft overall. Just because it's more balanced. AIM-9Gs are longer range, even though they don't have the crazy tracking capabilities of the SRAMs. But overall, you know what? I'll put this as an A-class vehicle because I still think it's very good. A lot of people will say that it shouldn't be, maybe even a B-class. I think it's really good so long as you use it properly. I've had many matches where I have 3, 4 plus kills and also bombing as well on base in the air RB. This thing is really good in ground RB. It's just an overall good plane. You know what? Just because the SRAMs have really low range, I'll put it in the B class. I didn't think I was going to do it, but I'm going to do it. Next up, we have the Lightning F-53. This one is, I'll just dump it right there. It's a D class, not very good. It does not have ballistic computers for either of its bombs or its rockets. Not good at all. It's got a very funky system where it mounts its rockets on top of the wings, which I just actually recently reused this plane, and it's, oh my gosh. You'd have to check out my review, but you could see the problems I was having where it just does not aim, like the rockets don't go where you want them to. And so it's just a really difficult plane to use, and not because it's like, oh, I don't have any ballistic computers. It's like these rockets just go in random places, it seems. I think because of the mounting of them. Plus, it doesn't have great missiles. It's got red tops, I believe only 2 of them. So it's not really incredibly capable. It's can only go about Mach 1, which is good for 9.3 BR, but it doesn't have countermeasures. Its cannons are mediocre. And the red tops, you more or less have to fire within about 2.5 kilometers from the enemy. And while they can track decently well, you know, if the enemy makes a slight turn last second, you're going to, you know, they're going to get missed, basically. So it's not really great in anything. It's okay as an air RB like dogfighter, arguably. It doesn't have good maneuverability, but you can get a few kills with it here and there. You can do some work when it comes to ground RB, close air support, but again, I don't really like it much. You know, I'm sure a lot of other people would probably say the same. Next up, we have the T2 Early, and this is a recently released plane as of the making of this video. And the T2 Early is a Japanese, currently 9.7 BR jet fighter for the Japanese ground tech, or air tech tree rather. And I like it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. It's got great acceleration, really good maneuverability compared to what you might think just based on how this plane is shaped. It's very, very nice in a lot of ways. It does only have 2 AIM-9Es, but at 9.7 BR, it's more forgivable than the F5C at 10.3 BR. And, ooh, the F5C, that's a tough one still at rank A, but I'll keep it for now. But again, I mean, this plane, the T2 Early, is pretty much going to be about the fastest plane in every match that's in, barring complete up tiers. It's just incredibly fast. You can boom and zoom with it very, very well. It's got a great cannon, the J61M1, or the JM61A11 or something like that, 1A1. It's just a phenomenal rotary cannon. It's pretty much the same cannon that you'd see on the F104 Starfighter series. I love it. It's just really, really powerful overall. It does not have ballistic computers for bombs or rockets, but you can carry up to 5 rather, if I'm not mistaken, 750-pound bombs, which actually makes it pretty good when it comes to air RB, dropping bombs on the enemy base. And you can also, of course, use this as a decent enough close air support plane in ground RB. The cannon can actually do quite a bit of work, especially around its BR, where there are so many vehicles like the BMD-4, BMP-2M, rather. You also have a bunch of other lightly armored vehicles, and even some heavily armored vehicles that have weaknesses on the roof, where this will just shoot right through them. And that's not even considering its Zunis, its Mighty Mouse rockets, 750-pound bombs, 500-pound bombs. It's actually quite capable when it comes to close air support. Again, a bit of it's taken away by the fact that it does not have ballistic computers, nor does it have a smart ordnance, but as an overall plane, it's pretty good. Now, I kind of just, because I really like it, want to put it in the A class, but I think it's probably more befitting of the B class. I think it's a really good plane, but I don't really know if it's worth saying it's better than a B class. So again, I mean, really, S, A, and B are all really, really good, and I think that these are planes that a lot of people can benefit from, whereas the C's are averages and the D's are kind of, I would avoid them unless you have a need in that category. But a lot of these planes, like for example with the Lightning and the Harrier, I'd rather just probably be better getting the Harrier than the Lightning, because they're both British air tech tree vehicles, and so you can just get this to grind and just kind of keep this one off to the side unless you get like a ton of money. So next up we have the A5C. This is a Chinese rank 6, currently 10.0 BR aircraft, and I really like it. It's got Magic 1 missiles. It's got up to 4 750-pound bombs. It's got a bunch of rockets, pretty much like the Chinese equivalent of the Mighty Mouse and Zuni rockets I can carry. Just a very overall capable aircraft. It's got, I believe, over 30 countermeasures, which isn't bad. I mean, it's not a ton. You can't just use them all willy-nilly, but you can still use like 2 or 3 at a time, you know, so it's pretty decent in that regard. It's very fast. It's a bit heavy, so this is actually based on the MiG-19, but it's the strike variant, so it's a bit heavier. It doesn't turn as well. It's got good cannons, but I mean, honestly, this is one of my favorite planes in War Thunder, and until the Su-25K came around, this was the plane that I would use whenever I had an SL boost. So if I had like a 50%, 100% plus SL boost, I would always hop into this, and I would get like 300, 400, 500,000 SL in a match. I mean, it's just really good. It's so fast that you can just drop bombs on the enemy base and then just start taking out aircraft. It's just really, really good. It can do pretty much everything you ask. It does not have ballistic computers, but it's still pretty capable when it comes to close air support because, again, it has just a good overall loadout. I kind of want to put it in the S class. Kind of. You know what? It's like an S-. I think that's better than the F5C, at least at 10.0 BR. If this went up to 10.3 or if this went down to 10.0, I would say that they could switch. But just based on BR, I'd say that they're pretty good where they currently are. Okay, we are in the closing stretch here, and these ones are probably going to be very easy for me to kind of post in various spots here. So we have the Ariete. This is a currently 9.3 BR Italian fighter, jet fighter. It's got 2 engines, believe it or not, despite how small it is and how it looks, but it's an amazing gunfighter, possibly the best and most refined gunfighter in War Thunder. It's just phenomenal. It's got great speed, maneuverability, good guns, but really the issue is that it has no missiles. Of course, at 9.3 VR, you can't really expect countermeasures, but it doesn't have those. It's not supersonic, has no any sort of ground attack, so you kind of have to go with the G91 if you want the ground attack. So even though I would personally rate this as like an S-class in Air RB, it just lacks so many things, at least just as a gunfighter, right? As a gunfighter, easily an S-class. An Air RB overall, if you consider the fact that it doesn't have missiles, it's not supersonic at 9.3 VR, I'd probably rate it an A or B, but the fact that it does not have any close air support and it only has high explosive ammunition, which means that going after ground targets is pretty much not going to happen unless you're hitting an open top vehicle, kind of have to put it as a C variant. You know, like I said, it's got its caveats. It's excellent as a gunfighter, but it really can't do much outside of gunfighting, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Milan, and the Milan is a 9.7 BR, rank 6 French strike aircraft. This thing is incredibly fast, but it is just not good. A lot of people, I remember Defin made a video about this. He couldn't even scrounge up a positive KD with this thing. And Defin is amazing. I feel I was kind of in the same boat as he was. I couldn't really get anything going with this aircraft. And it's really good when it comes to a quick strike, but it has no countermeasures. Its cannons are They're 30mm meh cannons. It can carry quite a few bombs and destroy, for the most part, a base. I don't believe you can actually destroy an entire base with its bomb setup. It does have listed computers for both bombs and rockets, which is nice, but it only has 2 AIM-9Bs. So it kind of puts into perspective here where the T2 early, which in my opinion is just a substantially better plane overall, has 2 AIM-9Es, which are more or less kind of like AIM-9B pluses. This only has 2 AIM-9Bs. They're very similar when it comes to speed. The Milan kind of wins out a little bit there, I think. Maybe not actually. This is just a much worse aircraft. I mean, this is right there with the Lightning F-53. Not good, in my opinion. Just not good at all. Next up, and getting near the end here, we have the J-35A. This is a currently 9.7 BR aircraft in realistic, and I want to love it. I love the J-35D, love it so much, but the J-35A is just, I mean, it guzzles fuel, which can create problems. If you forget to put at least 20 minutes of fuel in your loadout, you're going to be suffering, and that really kind of hurts the performance of this aircraft the more fuel you put into it. So it's really tough for me to say one way or the other. I kind of want to put it at the C, kind of want to put it at the D, but I'll put it in the D class because it doesn't have ballistics computers, lacks bombs, only has AIM-9B variants, so the RB-24s, but that's pretty much just a variant of the AIM-9Bs, which means at 9.7 BR, you can only have AIM-9Bs. It's got no countermeasures. It's got no tracers for its cannons at all. 0 tracers. So it's just no bombs, rockets at best. So it's not good for close air support. This is pretty much an aircraft versus aircraft plane only, Air RB. And even then, I mean, just to be able to use it is very, very difficult. I mean, it's like driving an F1 car, you know? I mean, like, you pretty much have to be I don't want to say you have to be an expert to use it, but it's just not easy at all. It does not hold your hand. And again, those missiles are not good. It forces you to be a gunfighter, but you don't have tracers. So, I like it a lot when it comes to performance, even though it's got worse performance than the J-35D, but that's to be expected with about a 1.0 BR decrease, but it's just not really, in my opinion, all that great. And then finally, we have the A4E early. This one's a little bit interesting to kind of place because it's the lowest BR of any of these. Despite being 8.7 BR, it is still ranked 6. It is for the Israeli tech tree, or 8.7 BR, and it's just really, really good. You know, it can carry up to 3 20mm gun pods on the bottom, which is an absolute fun loadout. It can carry a ton of napalm. If I'm not mistaken, it carries enough napalm to destroy 3 bases and destroy a large part of a 4th one in Air RB, which is just phenomenal. But in order to actually do that is just ridiculous, and you'd have to dodge missiles, or you have to make sure that no one even sees you, which is not going to happen. But you do have countermeasures. So it has 30mm cannons, countermeasures. It can carry 2 AIM-9Bs, which at 8.7 BR is not all that bad. Aim 9Bs aren't really good, but at the lowest BRs in which you can carry them, so around 8.0 with the Seahawk Mark 100, even up to around 8.7 or arguably around 9.0-ish BR, you still catch a lot of people off guard, and you can kill them with them pretty easily, especially for bombers that are not all that maneuverable. So it's actually a pretty usable loadout. It's really good when it comes to ground RB. Interestingly, it does not have any sort of ballistic computers for bombs or rockets, despite the fact that it has walleye guided bombs. So it's a little bit weird, and I believe it also has some ATGM, some maybe AGM-12Bs, the bullpups. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong, but with all that considered, I really like this aircraft, but you know what? I want to put it in A, want to put it in B. I'll put it in B, I'll give it a B+, because I think it's a really, really good aircraft in many ways, especially at 8.7 BR. If this was 9.0 BR, I'd probably just give it like a regular B or even a B-. It's a really good aircraft, and it can do a lot for you, but it doesn't really have a lot of energy retention, and the problem with it, as opposed to, for example, like the Su-25 or even the A-10A, or more so the Su-7 BMK, is that once you start loading up ordnance on this, and this is an ordnance carrying aircraft, like that's the main role of it, it really starts to have its performance negatively impacted. Whereas with the Su-25K, which is the same price, it can handle carrying 4 napalm bombs as well as a bunch of 23mm cannons underneath the wings way better than this can, to the point where you end up being a sitting duck because you can't maintain your energy with the A4E early. So it's a really good aircraft in many regards, and I like it a lot, especially with the troll setup of 320mm cannons underneath, but it has a lot of flaws, so I'll still give it a B+ rating, but that's about it. So that said, we have a bunch of things here. I mean, I did not expect the list to go right here. I actually expected me to be more generous and just put more things in the A category, because I really don't like putting things down. It's pretty even throughout, interestingly. So we have the Su-25K and the A5C in the A series, or the S class. We have the AV-8A, the F5C, and the A-10A, all American planes, fittingly in the A series, or the A class, with the Su-7 BMK, Harrier GR1, T2 early, and the A4 early, A4 early here in the B class, all very, very good in their own right. We have the C class, which is the MiG-21 spsk, MiG-21S, and the Ariete for the Italians. All very good, and as you could probably tell, I mean, these are kind of like the do-it-all multi-role. These are still do-it-all multi-role, but not quite to the level of these. And then you have like kind of start parsing it out a little bit more better in one way or the other. This is better for strike. This is better for strike. This is better for air, combat. This is better kind of for air combat. This is just purely air combat. Same with this and this. And then you have the ones that at the very bottom aren't really all that great in any regard. So you have the Lightning F-53, the Milan, and the J-35A. Now, all these aircraft at the very bottom are still very much usable. I still use the J-35A occasionally, and the Milan is actually pretty good for grinding. But again, you really can't do much with it, because what'll happen is you bomb your targets, and then you try to get a kill, and then you die. So you pretty much just have to feast on bot planes or unaware enemies who are actually playing. But either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I've been talking about this for way too long. I'll try to make a tank version of this, but here you have it. Let me know again, and see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.